living in the moment, and the moment is the future.
With Pam and John. This is SPEDTalk.
Welcome to SPED Talk with Pam,
and John,
also known as The Calm.
before the storm.
Our purpose is to elevate the conversation and amplify special education resources.
And our why is all about the kids. You know, Pam, there are so many organizations and people around Texas who are just making it happen for kids with disabilities.
So let's make this a platform to celebrate their efforts, because special education is about making the impossible possible. All right, John, we're back again.
We are back again, Pam. Here we go.
So
TCASE.
TCASE. All right. So who do we have in the house with us today?
Well, I don't know. Who do we have in the house?
Who's in the house? You have to respond.
Cynthia Anderson from Report IC.
Cynthia Anderson's in the house.
Welcome.
Who else is in the house?
Marilyn London, Tice County, SSA.
Marilyn, we're glad to have you.
Chris Holiday, Alamo Heights, ISD.
Chris Holiday.
Emma Baker with Region 10.
Hey,
Glad to
Pamela.
have you with us.
Chuck No with the Partners Resource Network.
Good to have you, Chuck. Well, we are thrilled. We're so excited. Pam and I were worried. We're really popular. So we were worried that this room may have like overflow of people. And we were worried that you wouldn't be able to hear our voices on the recording, or that, you know, the cheers would be so loud that the production of this podcast would not turn out real good. At least that's what Pam was worried
No, I
about.
don't think I was really worried about that, John.
Okay.
I think that was more you.
Oh, that was me. Okay. I'll own that one.
Okay.
But we're excited to have a group of individuals here for our podcast. This is the largest group we've ever had for a podcast.
Right.
We usually have maybe a guest on or a couple guests on, and this is a good sized crowd for a podcast. Usually podcasts aren't a huge crowd of people, but we felt like having the opportunity to come to TCASE, you know, each of us for our own reasons really celebrate this organization. We had the opportunity to go over to TCASE's headquarters last month or month before last and record an episode with administration from TCASE and really talk about the vision and the mission and the purpose of TCASE and some of the history behind TCASE. But each of us have been members of TCASE for many years, and you know, we've sat in the seats that you're sitting in now as practitioners for a long time as well. So the goal of SPEDTalk really is to promote positive things that are going on in special ed. It's so easy, like we talked about earlier, to kind of get in the weeds a little bit with special ed. There's a lot of things going on. There's change in the state, right?
Right.
There's some of the change is hard for some of the people that we work with. And so as a result, we felt like we needed a platform to celebrate the positive things that are going on, to kind of frame this conversation from a positive perspective, and really to kind of accelerate or amplify resources across the state. So that's our goal.
Okay. And we typically ask, one question we typically ask is, what's so special about special education? Because that's a couple of years ago, it was just, I was taking a course and that question just kept coming up. So what's special about special education? And so that's the question we're throwing out to you. And we'd like some participants to come up and
Or just talk from
just talk from where you are and just
yeah.
tell us, what do you think is special about special education?
And have you heard that before? Have you heard people say, well, what's so special about special ed anyway? Is that something you guys have heard before?
Okay, to make this work, you have to talk to us. Okay, just know that.
An adjunct professor at New Clear Lake, and I'm often asked that
Okay.
question.
Okay.
And to me, it's giving every child that's sitting in your classroom an equal opportunity at being successful in what you're delivering.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to do that, you have to understand the children that are sitting in your classroom, and you have to understand what resources might be available to them, because we all don't come to the table with the same ability set.
So true.
And so it's important that we do everything we can to deliver it how they need to learn it, what they need to learn, and to close that gap so that they can sit next to a peer and we're all of different levels and we can be successful, have a shot at being successful. That's what it is.
All right, thank you.
That's a great example. Yeah, I mean, that really sums it up well.
Anyone else?
And for me, it's exciting to be a part of a team that gets to make that happen. You
Yes.
change lives.
Yes.
You change lives for kids, for families,
Yep.
every day. What an exciting job. I mean, it's a thrill to think we're going to see a miracle
Yeah.
almost every day.
Well, we are of like mind. I'm always telling people, aren't you excited? Like, is this not an exciting time in education right now? History is happening right now before our eyes. We're living through these historical moments, of inclusivity, of really looking inward at our educational systems, at our practices at the state level, at the federal level. There are discussions being had about special education in rooms and at levels that they've never been had before. There's a few superintendents talking about special ed right now. I mean, and that's not just being silly, but when you spend your career, everybody hates the word advocating, right? But really just trying to carve off a little bit of something for kids that don't look like the other kids, or don't walk like the other kids, or don't talk like the other kids. But you, for whatever reason, have been blessed to see the innate abilities inside those children, to feel like there's action going on right now. There's movement. It's not stagnation. And then to feel like we, the people in this room, the people at this conference, the people in this state, get to choose. How do we want this to be in 5 years from now? We're being given permission to take risks and chances and to shape this thing into something we want. Now, in our systems, we struggle, right? Because humans, we are habitual people, and status quo is got that strong magnetic pull that's hard to get off center. But I don't know. I love that. I'm excited. That is exactly how I feel.
Did you use the word advocate?
I did.
Okay. Well, I was going to say, in my training as school administrator, that's one of the things professors told us is you need to see your position as an advocate
Yes.
for kids with disabilities.
100%.
And the educators working with. And to me, that is the way it should be.
Yeah.
And at times, I had to tell an administrator, you really shouldn't be sending this kid to AEP or whatever.
Yeah.
And so at times you have to speak up.
Oh, yeah. I agree. So thinking about where we are in the state, right? In the past few years, we've had, I know I've referred to it by several people now as this tsunami that's come through our system. I think most all of our schools are struggling with, this influx of evaluation requests and ongoing, we're adding students to the caseload. We're adding students to the classroom. We're always slow to add teachers to the roster. So we're kind of playing this, let's hurry up and then let's wait on the teacher. Now, maybe next year, then we'll, so it's this balancing act of trying to keep our adult FTEs in check with our kid FTEs. And so, but one of the themes I hear beyond all that is this transition that's going on at the federal and state level. The PBMAS system that we've had as a system of accountability going away, but really it's just being replaced with something by name that's supposed to be similar to it in fashion, and that's results-driven accountability. I don't know. What does anyone have thoughts on that? Is this a profound move, a shift in how we are evaluating states, or is this just a change in title of a program that we use to evaluate?
I think one of the things that you talked about was mindset. So whatever you call it, if you still have the same mindset of what it was before,
yes,
it doesn't change anything.
Yeah.
But if you start really looking at your data, it's like, this is going to impact kids. This is going to, we're going to use this. We're not just going to wait until the end of the year.
Yes.
We're constantly monitoring and looking at it and making adjustments to what is needed based on not just the data, but feedback from the parents, feedback from the kids, feedback from whatever our curriculum alignment, whatever we need, I think we will start seeing changes.
Yeah.
And when people start seeing how that should be seamless and be working together, I think that, when you bring that mindset to it, I think they'll understand it and say, yeah, this is just a different way that we're looking at it. Maybe, some of the same language or some of the same data, but we're going to look at it differently. And the final thing is, what is in the best interest of the kid is the kid progressing, and the kid's the most important thing.
Yes. And Pam, remember how you couched this? You said, I really want to know what people think. And like, if we're moving to a results-driven accountability system, what does that mean for a day in the life of a child?
Right.
Remember, you said that.
Yeah, because thank you, John. Just has to do with, we can make all the changes, adults can make all the changes that we want to make. But if it's not impacting that student, then we're just making changes. Just for the sake of, we're saying we're doing whatever, but if it's not impacting the students on the day-to-day, then it's really, not serving the kids well. And I think when we look at results-driven accountability, we're looking at, and really, ask ourselves, are what we're doing, does it really matter? Does it make a difference? Because a lot of times we'll spin our wheels, and we still end up in the same spot.
Mm-hmm.
Kids are not, they're not making they're not improving, and we're frustrated because we're working hard. That's one thing about special educators is that we're some hardworking people.
Yes, we are.
Thank you.
Pam, we are very hardworking, and you're working really hard to keep your nose from running.
I know.
Come on, girl.
I know. And
We
for the
always
audience,
have fun on these podcasts.
the allergies are really bad today.
Yeah.
So,
But to me, coming from NCLB and then ESSA is measuring the gap and closing the gap of learning.
Yeah.
And what we feel is appropriate for the child to learn.
Right.
And so that's the change. And to me, people, with talking about monitoring, is that we're trying to get people to look at why is this not working for this group of kids or the civics group, and what can we do? And a good part of it comes back to planning, working smarter, not necessarily harder.
Absolutely.
And looking at what could work and how can we make that happen.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of that is tied to money, but not totally. It's having a plan. How can we, a lot of times, like you said, teachers look up and go, Chuck's just not making progress like he should.
Yeah.
But what needs to change, either from you or someone else, to help me learn more? Close that gap faster. And that takes the family, community to pulling together.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier, Chuck, in a conversation we were having before this session, that importance of kind of creating those shared bonds, those relationships between parents and educators to where everyone feels like they have a voice. And I think you kind of hit it spot on there, is that, historically, we've really, I think, felt like we've been at odds with each other, that sometimes. And I don't think it's because, I think everyone in the room always tends to want the same thing. They want this student to prosper. But the breakdown in communication, the breakdown in understanding of what's best for a child with this significant disability or this type of need, and a lot of that, I think, at times does come from a breakdown in monitoring, a breakdown in really documenting the efforts that have been tried, what haven't worked, and giving up things that don't work and trying things that do. And it's, when do we pivot? When do we persevere? Instead of being kind of stuck into this pattern of movement, and we never get off this pattern of movement until really so much time has passed that it's too late to really do anything than just to continue on.
I think data is critical. I think it can push needed change. Not every child is fortunate enough to have that supportive family when they go home. We have children for at least 8 hours a day. We can make a difference with every single child.
Absolutely.
And we have to look at ourselves. We can't expect the families that don't exist for that child to make the changes.
Yeah.
In looking at our PBMAS, the disproportionality, you can't ignore that you're putting more SPED kids or African-American children in punitive placements.
Right.
You can't ignore that. So we brought in restorative practices, and
Yeah.
when I took it to my superintendent, I said, it has to start with you. Because if it starts with me going and talking to all these principals, they're gonna go, oh my God.
Here we
We've
go
got so many-
again.
Yeah, instruction, we've got instruction, we gotta get those numbers up to them. And he, thank goodness, said, start it with me. So
Wow.
restoring the child that acts up doesn't act up because it's fun or that's the path they want in life.
Yeah.
There's something going on.
Yeah. There's a need that's
There's a
unmet.
need.
There is
And
an
so-
emotional, yeah.
Yeah, so I do think the data can
Yeah.
have a positive impact on children. I think they're kind of begging us to look at the data and say, quit being punitive with me, restore me,
Right.
and yeah, anyway.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with you. I think sometimes we just get into bad habits. And the more challenging a student is, it's easier to create a habit that's not positive for that student. And then when you look at the cultural differences and the life experiences and the fact, sometimes we write it off as common sense, and it's really not common sense.
We make assumptions, don't we? Yeah.
It's really, do this child have the same common experience that I have? And a lot
Yes.
of times they do not have the same common
That's
experience. And so how can I expect that student to behave the way I think he or she should behave when they don't have that experience? Unless I take time to teach that student
That's right.
that behavior that I think is appropriate for my classroom setting.
Yeah.
And that's where I see a lot of our younger teachers just kind of fall apart because they don't understand.
We teach reading, we teach math.
Right.
Right.
But they should come to us knowing those
Right.
behaviors.
Right.
And if you
yeah.
think about kindergarten, for those of us who didn't go, and those of you who did go, is that
Yeah.
the expectations for kindergarten is so much greater than what it was 5 years ago, 10 years, 20
Yeah.
years ago. Because,
And family structures are so
Yeah.
much different now than what they were 20, 30 years ago. For me in the 70s growing up from a family of divorce, I was the anomaly in our systems there wasn't a lot of families of divorce of my friends. Most of my friends' parents were married but now my own kids come home and say, Dad, I think I might be the only kid in my class whose parents are still married.
Yes.
And, and that's perspective. It's just like, oh, and so, do we do justice to that? Do we really invest in the time that children need to assimilate to our schools, considering the conditions that they come from, more typically than before?
Yeah, and now they are expecting us to do a lot more than just teaching the content areas.
Yeah.
So
We teach children now. We don't teach math
Yes,
anymore.
right,
Teach
right.
children.
And I think some people are, because kids are different than when they grew up, they don't feel, equipped.
Yeah.
And then we still have this data-driven part,
Yeah.
but which looks at, the academic part, but you got that social emotional behavior
That's
that
it.
needs to be addressed
That's it.
first. And do teachers feel comfortable in, I can't teach my math content right now because I got to work on, this kid is, doesn't have food, or this
Yeah.
kid has mental, health issues or whatever, along those lines. So we're putting a lot on the school's plate.
Yeah.
And the nice thing, or the good thing about that is the resources that they're beginning to give us so that we can address some of these issues.
Absolutely.
Instead of just
Such as
saying that's
those
all we're
restorative
doing.
practices,
Mhm,
because I think that's the way that it's set up is to include the student, and it's a process that I have seen work myself.
Mhm.
And because taking a little bit of time to build that social emotional piece will pay for the rest of that child's life.
You know, when you're not in moments of elevated emotion and heated experiences or feeling threatened, and most people, when you think to yourself, what is more important to me, my relationship with this person or being right? What is more important? Most people, when they're objective and when they're not emotionally driven, would say, well, my relationship. But we find ourselves, and I am, you know, even with my own children at times, getting into those points where I have to stop and say, oh, I bet you got me, you know, and because I love my babies more than that, that doesn't mean I'm going to give them what they want. That doesn't mean I'm going to pander to their needs when I know what's better for them is this. But it does mean that sometimes we'll go down paths with children or with colleagues that are non-productive because of that need to be right or to get our message heard. And I think it really comes back to the fact that, Chuck, you said this earlier, that we don't listen like we used to really understand people, that so much of our need to be heard overshadows our willingness to listen to others. And that happens with children a lot of times. And
That's profound.
so children have become like voiceless in many situations. Now they don't know how to speak up, right, or how to speak to each other. And so that's a great example. Yeah.
This is how they talk.
Yeah, their thumbs are super strong.
Their writing now looks like
Yeah,
this.
that's right. Don't ever try to play thumb wars with them.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to go back to a point that this young lady made
Yeah.
that I thought was very important about she realized in addressing the concern that she had, she realized that needed to come from somewhere higher up.
Yeah.
And in her case, the
Yes.
superintendent. And that, I think, is something that needs to happen all the time.
Every time.
Yes.
Whether it's a superintendent or it's a person directly over principals, somebody else, as a director, we have no line authority over a principal.
That's right.
And if you push somebody too many times, what happens?
Yeah. They shut down, they
You-
turn on you,
You burn your bridges,
Yeah.
saying we used to
Yeah.
use. And so
Yeah.
her point, her example, the thing she did, is an important example that directors English. And I tell parents, you need to communicate with your director if you haven't.
Yeah.
Like, how many times have we experienced, we've gotten reports back and it's like, oh my gosh, you were told what?
Right.
And so it's important to get that person who, you know, there's obviously lots of people in the schools that care.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's jobs that you make more money at.
Sure.
And with less stress,
Sure.
especially in special ed.
Yeah.
So there are people that care, so find them. And as school employees, you have to find someone that will, in her case, the superintendent. And,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes it needs to be the board.
Yeah.
Of course.
Parents
Do
will
that.
often take to Facebook though before they will come and find us, right?
Yes, they will. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Facebook is, a lot of people will resort to Facebook.
They feel hurt.
Yeah.
They feel hurt.
Yes. Yeah. And the social media thing, what a powerful instrument, and you know, can be used for good or evil, right? We can use our powers for good or for evil. I'll tell you, when I figured that out, boy, I can do good stuff if I use my powers for good, you know. And but I think too that speaks to, you know, intent. I mean, I think it speaks to expectations in people sometimes, and into when there is a breakdown in communication or someone doesn't feel like they have a voice. And you know, I think most of my thoughts usually stem back down to that child and that experience they're having. And I think so often for kids, you know, this generation of kids, the previous generation of kids, those coming up through high stakes testing and such, there's been such a focus on standardized achievement that in many ways we've had these groups of kids that have felt subpar because of their ability to perform or not perform in these certain venues. And that's, I think in many ways, we've missed opportunities to show them what they are good at, where they do have strengths. That it's not that you're a child with this disability, it's you're a child that's really good at this. You struggle with this. We're going to attend to this the best we can, but we really got to build on this and use this to overcome this. And I think we miss opportunities. And that's why, talking about being excited, I feel like now, for years, I'd go to trainings and hear about passion-based learning and strength-based approaches. And I think, whatever, I've got work to do, and now it really makes sense to me that of course we want to focus on individual strengths, and us in administration. If we are not working to make sure that the members of our team are in the right seats and are developing in ways that are moving them in ways they need to move. And if we're not attending to those things, if we're not developing that capacity within them and making sure and attending that we've got our quarterback throwing the ball and we've got our running backs running the ball, and then why are we even coaching, right? We shouldn't be doing that job. And that's difficult when you have to address, adult behaviors sometimes in ways that feelings get hurt. Sometimes lifestyles are affected, but it really does. It takes courage, and we have to attend to those things. So, I think back to the whole results-driven accountability piece and how for so long, everything we did in special ed really was about compliance. Are we compliant? And now that shift is, are we following the rules, the compliance bubble, and are students making progress, the achievement bubble? We have to have this balance of these two. That's exciting to me because that means we have a seat at the table.
Yeah, I would agree. I think we actually have always had a seat at the table, but sometimes it was the children's table.
Yeah.
I kind of look at Texas as in the lens of some of the things we did to ourselves.
Yeah.
We delayed allowing kids, students' test to count.
Yeah.
And if you would think about if we would have just started in 2004,
right,
when that requirement came out, that all students would be part of the testing process, where we would be today.
Right.
And it makes a big difference because we sit there and think about students before the STAR, they were passing the TACS or the TOS, whatever test it was, they were part of that. And then as we kept moving and changing things and to a Texas way, we just delayed it.
Yeah.
And that's the sad part about it. The intent might have been good, but the outcomes have not been great.
Yeah.
And now there's no choice, and students will have to take the same state assessment or an alternate assessment. And it's kind of like what Paula said yesterday. Why are we not including kids? You have to think about the fact we're excluding. Right. If you sit there and think about McDonald's.
In order to have to include, that means you have an exclusive system.
Exactly. You can walk into McDonald's, as long as you have shirt and shoes.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Make those requirements. But you can order. Makes no difference what manner in which you have to order your food. You're welcome.
Yeah.
And schools should be at least minimally
as welcoming as McDonald's
or any public place, because it's like no one changes you.
Yeah.
When you got to, when you go into order, and you sit there and think about it. Okay, if we're saying, we're building for all learners, then we should be really working with all learners. Yeah. Everybody comes to the table with different talents, and also different challenges.
Yeah,
and it's just up to us as educators to be willing to meet those challenges.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think we've been in a box for so long, like you talk about ordering at a restaurant. Well, I'm on a specific diet, so I can't have everything on it.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just have to ask and say, hey, I don't see this on the menu, but can you get this for me?
Yes.
And you'd be surprised. It's already, they're like, oh, sure, we could do that.
They want to accommodate that need.
Right. And sometimes people think, well, no, we can't. No, we can't do that. That's not on the menu.
Right.
And so we have to start thinking bigger and how we can make those changes, because like you said, kids are different, and it's amazing, like I said, using your strengths, what we can do.
That's right.
And And amazing using those strengths, how it really affects their weaknesses.
Yeah.
And it makes them stronger too.
Yeah. Who was it that coined that phrase of if you try to get a fish to climb a tree,
Yeah.
I mean, that fish is going to be disabled all day long. Like if you try to get me to grow hair, right? That ain't going to happen.
That will do it for this episode of SPED Talk.
And remember, courage creates culture and kindness keeps us connected.
Until the next time, I'm Pam,
And I've been John.
and this is
SPED Talk. To continue to elevate the conversation, hit us up on Twitter at SPEDTalk 2020, where you can find links to all of our episodes and each of the resources that we discussed today.
John also links to the resources will be available at our podcast site.
And if you found these resources helpful, be sure to share them with a friend, because information should always flow through us, not to us.
Elevate the conversation
Living in the moment, and the moment is the future.
with Pam and